Nigerian military advance efforts towards a final showdown with Boko Haram insurgents. The level of preparedness, the morale of troops, and the role of the citizens in mobilizing support for a total victory against insurgents is of utmost importance. How has the military fared in the past weeks, and what can the media do to help the military achieve this wondrous goal? These and many more security issues form the basis of our discussion on today's episode of Security Dossier. Welcome on board. My name is Lawrence Audu. We'll be back after the short break. The Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Tukur Buratai, has since relocated to Nigeria's troubled northeast region, where he is currently leading operations against the dreaded insurgent element. Already, casualties on the part of the insurgents have been increasing on the daily. Is this an effect of a magic wand? What really has changed the tide since the beginning of the war on insurgency, and what role can the media play to be part of this success story? With me to discuss on the program today are two gentlemen, public affairs analysts and journalists. On my right, I have Mr. Elias Ayuba. Welcome to Security Dossier.
Thank you for having me.
And I have Victor Aka.
It's my pleasure.
Okay, over the week, we saw the activities marking the World Press Freedom Day. I want to ask, how has the Nigerian press fared so far in this dispensation?
Okay, first of all, I would say that it's not so rosy for the Nigerian press the world over. We have seen countries, among some of the countries that have been mentioned by the index, North Korea is one of them, as one of the countries where the media is not finding it easy to practice and to do their job. And then again, other factors that have contributed to this in the light of the last this index was the issue of the COVID-19 and how countries are muzzling the media from practicing and doing their job the way they should, reporting the fight against COVID-19 and all of that. There's a lot covered in secrecy.
Yes.
And some countries are, I would say, even in Nigeria, some states appear to be living in denial, not really facing the reality as it is. It's not something you fight covering up. It's something that is something that needs a holistic approach, and therefore you need all the partners that you can get, as much as you can get, to fight it. And you can't have that covering up things.
Victor, I come to you now. How has the Nigerian press fared under this dispensation, especially covering activities of the Nigerian military and other security agencies?
Yeah, I personally, I'll say at least there is a little improvement. There is a little improvement, but there are some hitches such that some of them are the independent journalists or media is facing a lot of this challenge. It's like the work, they are teaching them how to do the work. They're not being independent on their own to do the work. And there are a lot of cases. We can report the case of this renowned media house that some journalists were arrested.
You're talking about Daily Trust, though?
Daily Trust.
Okay.
And some incidences like that. So we're progressing, but we're still lacking behind because of that independence.
Okay, Elias, I want to come to you now. What is the relationship between the Nigerian military and the Nigerian media? What is it, a frosty relationship? Is it a good relation? How is it like generally?
In Nigeria, you mean?
Yes, we're looking at Nigeria.
Okay. Well, I would say that it's on the average. I would say it's on the average, in the sense that the military, as we know it, just recently, the Defense Headquarters, for instance, set up the Defense Media Operations Directorate, which is responsible for giving, continuous updates on the various operations conducted by the military across the country.
Yes.
So that's also that's a plus. That's commendable on their part. However, sometimes there are restrictions as to how you should report your
What
issue.
are those restrictions?
Well, maybe I would say having access to areas of conflict is a problem.
Okay.
For instance, on my own now, for instance, I cannot just wake up and go to the theater of war, for instance, now, and demand that, okay, I need so and so and so information, I should be given that. It will take a whole lot
sometimes
to have that.
Don't you think that sometimes these guys are skeptical? They are not sure of your mission. You don't just walk up to them and say, okay, I need so footage to use, in terms of, for reference material. They need to know you. They need to have built a trust. Do you think that we have that trust already embedded between the Nigerian military and the media?
On a general note, I'll say the trust is not up to 60%. The trust is not up to 60%. And those are the issues we're having, that the trust is no more there, but some selected journalists, let me put it like that, because the military, there are people too, so working with journalists, then they have some selected journalists that they feel, or let me say platforms, that they feel they have some trust in them, and that is really affecting our work.
Now, would you say that the media has been supportive enough, judging by, because we have seen instances where when stories go up about exploits of military, you find divisive and debasing comments against the military.
Yes.
But anytime it happens that the insurgents make any little gain against the military, even if we have 1 or 2 casualties, it floods everywhere. What is responsible for all this?
I think that one thing that is key is civil-military relations between the Nigerian, in the country is very important, and the fight against insurgency and how the public will view the military is very important. For instance, I would say, in my observation, is that there is not much of trust between the Nigerians, as we know them, and the military. The perception about the military, mostly in Nigeria, is that of brutality and, being, extrajudicial practice by some military personnel, overzealous personnel, and so on. That is the general perception about the military. So when it comes to appraising, or should I say, seeing the military for the role that it's playing as it is, it's lacking. Even when it is being presented to the people, there's some sort of reluctance to actually accept it as the fact or as the truth. And you could say that over time, there's not much of transparency in the whole operation, in the whole delivery of information between the military and the people. So that could be said to be responsible for this kind of laid-back attitude when it comes to accepting information from the military forces. This is the very reason why, for instance, the last issue about Chad, when Nigerians saw, in fact, it will amaze you that some of the videos that went viral on social media regarding the operations of the Chadian forces were not even
Chadian exploits.
Yes, were not even correct. Some of the videos that went viral were not even true. Some of them were old videos, but because of perception, generally speaking, Nigerians don't really appreciate anything that comes from them.
Now, sincerely speaking,
and you could blame this on the, like I said, lack of transparency on the part of leaders and Nigerians. So that leads to a very serious gap, a lack of trust, and so on. So each time you give an information, people are like, are you sure this thing happened? Are you sure they didn't doctor it? You hear all manner of things.
Now, sincerely speaking, I want to ask you, you have covered the military extensively. Of course, we have been on the same trip many times, From your own sincere and unbiased judgment, has the military actually been fair to its constitutional role, especially in this dispensation? I'm looking at it, the military of the past 5 years up till now.
Well, from observation and by virtue of my relationship with the military, I would say that, yes, if you say fair, I would say the military have been fair in delivering its mandate. It may not, you could argue that it's not enough and that more needs to be done, but I would say that, yes, I would say that they have been fair in delivering their mandate. If you look at the sacrifices that our soldiers are making, for instance, in the Northeast, a lot of soldiers are there. I've been there several times, and I've seen how, some of them, their homes is now in the trenches, you see, and they stay there all through for months, in the front line, at the risk of knowing that at any point in time there could be an attack on their lives. And they have taken that oath, and they are willing to stand by it. Several operations that have been conducted by our military forces, it's commendable. Before now, before I would say before 2020, back in 2014 and 2015, or should I say 2013 and 2014, which was the peak of the fight against Boko Haram. They laid siege on a lot of territories in the Northeast. Then I was even in Maiduguri for I was in Maiduguri at that time, living there, and a lot of territories were taken over by the Boko Haram. But we saw how our military forces were able to recapture all those places, and I can say that at the moment, a good number of I can't even recall any territory still in the hands of Boko Haram. So that's a plus. It's not an easy thing to do.
Now, in your own judgment, Mr. Victor, has information flow from the military to the general public been adequate enough to help sustain the fight against insurgency?
Yeah, it's not very much enough. It's not very much enough. There is that lacking of information. Like he said, talking about transparency. On a general note, is what Nigerians, is what the youth, let me say Nigerians are facing. Nigerians don't believe in Nigeria again. Not just to talk about military. They don't believe in Nigeria. They don't believe in their government.
No, that's another, is a perception issue.
Yes.
Anyway, we have been talking about the military's, the media's role in support of Nigerian military. Yeah. And I've been in the studio with two gentlemen, pressmen and public affairs analyst, Mr. Victor Aka and Mr. Elias Ayuba, who've been bantering on this issue. We'll take a quick break, and when we come back, the show continues.
For almost a decade, the Nigerian army have given their all to ensure that our dear country is not overrun by Boko Haram insurgents. Some have in the process paid the ultimate price, while many will forever live with indelible scars occasioned by their determination to protect the country, no matter the hurdle. Despite these, they have remained resolute and undaunted, and today, all territories the insurgents once took control of have been recaptured and normalcy restored. And now, for the first time in a long time, the end of Boko Haram is foreseeable. Therefore, the wisest thing for the remaining insurgents to do is to surrender today or face total destruction from the army. Remember, the Nigerian army will stop at nothing to ensure that total peace is restored in all parts of the country. So, be wise and embrace peace today or get ready to be ruthlessly dealt with. This message is brought to you by the Coalition on Conflict Resolution.
Welcome back to Security Dossier. My name is Lawrence Audu. We have been talking on the media's role in support of Nigerian military in winning the war against insurgency and many other issues. Recently, following the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, some northern governors have begun to repatriate the Almajiri children from the streets to their respective states. Now, how dangerous is this trend, and what are the security implications of the Almajiri system in Nigeria? My guests are still in the studio. We're going to be talking about this issue as well as combining it with the role of the media in supporting the military. Gentlemen, welcome back to Security Dossier.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, we were talking about something before we went on that break. I want to ask you again, what do you think, how can the military enjoy full support of the Nigerian populace?
Transparency. That's one thing that I would say, that we need to see more transparency on the part of the military. There should be no covering up, or should I say there should be no, you shouldn't be seen to be covering up anything. You should be seen to be as transparent as possible. And one of the ways that I would advocate to do that is, for instance, in terms of if you say 100 Boko Haram or insurgents have been neutralized in the front lines. I know that it's a war zone. I know that it's a very, very tensed environment. You don't have time to go and start doing videos or snapping pictures, but people want to see evidence.
No, but you also know that it is against international practice to show gruesome videos of images of dead people.
At least for the journalists,
okay,
who you are relating with.
No,
he is the one to convey the message.
Time to that number, I have received messages from the front line, and I've seen these videos where most of the time you use file photos, especially for the online. I mean, for the online people, you use file photos sometimes to as feature image. Sometimes when you use some of these gory,
in the presentation.
How do you know? My question now is,
yes,
how do you convince your audience, your readers, that look, we actually got these gruesome images, these visuals, we got them, but this is what the situation is. How do you convert?
Yes, I would say that there is censorship. Like,
okay,
you can do self-censorship. You can do. It is not just the way you are giving the materials. You just go put it out there for everybody to see like that. No, that's censorship.
Okay.
So there's a way you can censor the visuals in a way that can actually showcase that, okay, this thing is actually true. It actually happened. Okay. So I think that's one way in which, as much as possible, I'm not saying that you must now bring out everything that you have, but as much as you can, let's have some visuals, let's have some images showing us that this thing was this place was recaptured, this so number of ammunition was seized. So let's see more of that. I know that they have been doing that. I know they have been doing that, but more can be done in that regard.
Victor, you?
Okay, for Nigerian military to regain its trust, for me, number one, I advocate for the information management. That's number one. Two, I want to talk about the civil military relationship. which I think the Nigerian Army has a department that handles that. But how do they do it? You know, that's the question. How do they do it? We have incidences, you know, as military, that human beings like us. And we also have, in any society, we have Judas, we have bad eggs. So when they commit, what do? You set up a panel, you try to like punish them according to the law.
No, but the military already has a human rights desk. I think the Nigerian Army was the first to establish that.
Yes.
When General Buratai took over as the chief of army staff, they established a human rights desk. No, but I've been privy to some information. I've been privy to a number of court martials where soldiers who went to misbehave, are rewarded in their own coin. So many soldiers have gone, and if you recall, in recent times, I think there are hardly issues relating to human rights abuses on the part of the Nigerian military at the moment. Yes, there are some isolated cases, but I can't remember how rampant compared to how it used to be anymore.
Let me give you an instance. Recently, we heard of soldiers that were on uniform issuing threats. That was at the beginning of the issue of this lockdown.
When something happened in Delta State.
Yes, well, they were issuing threats that they are going to rape women in Delta States, they are going to do blah, 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 and so on. And we heard, yes, that the military have apprehended those guys. They have been arrested and they are going to face investigation will be conducted and they will face disciplinary actions. We've heard that. But from that point on, you don't get to hear anything again. What is the outcome of the investigation and what disciplinary action have been taken? And this is across board. This is across all the other security agencies. Whenever anything, for instance, with the help of social media these days, it's easy to escalate anything.
Sure.
And so once it
escalated, but don't you think
you see a response?
Yes,
from
don't
the
you
military,
think the reason why?
But you don't get to hear to the last.
No, but don't you think the reason why some of this information don't get to the public finally is because how porous the Nigerian social media space is. You release visuals of information containing how the soldiers were shown the way out, and human rights voices will begin to cry out when you know that this guy has actually committed a crime.
What would the human rights be crying out for? Because in the first place,
no, but we have seen them cry foul many times.
Those advocating for a disciplinary action to be taken most of the times are civil society organization and human rights organization, and then the agency reaches out and carried out the expected investigation and do what is needful, and then you come out crying foul again. No,
on this note, how do you balance this? Human rights organizations begin to cry. When action is taken, human rights organizations come again and say, no, this one is too much. How do you strike a balance?
There's no issue about it. If you feel you're doing something right and someone is making noise there, you don't follow
the person any explanation.
Which means, the military may just be right in saying that, okay, well, we have apprehended the guys. Whatever happens,
if they've done the right thing,
it remains with us.
No. We want to see it to the last point of it. We want to see what happened at the end of it, or after the whole investigation, after arresting them, what happens. We want to see that part.
Now, we'll leave that for now. Let's go to the issue of the Almajiri system, which is supposed to be the crux of the second segment of this program. You all have seen how these children litter the entire space, the entire streets in northern Nigeria. You understand the Almajiri, the street beggars, these ones that are taken from their homes, exported to different parts of the country in search of Quranic education. What is the security implication of the Almajiri system?
It's something worrisome. It's something worrisome because, in fact, when I started following the report of taking those Almajiris to the various states, the number one question I asked was, how do they know that these people are genuine people? They are genuine in these states that are taking them to. That's
They
number one.
probably may have asked the little children, and they mentioned the name of that village. And
Nigeria that has a problem of data, that does not even know, they always have problem of data, statistics, they will know where those guys are coming. Yeah, probably they will know, but not all. Not all.
what's your take?
Well, for me, I think that this is not the time for this. Till today, for the life of me, I don't understand why the northern governors decide to embark on this mission. This is not the time for this, because you are only making the situation worse. We are in a time whereby the movement of people has to be restricted as much as possible. We are also struggling with capacity to manage the crisis that we have at hand in terms of infrastructure and the needed equipment to be able. We are talking about lack of test kits. We are talking about lack of PPEs. And so a lot. We are talking about lack of bed space and so on. And you are migrating people from one state to another without knowing what they are carrying on them. That's the danger of it. Some states are smart enough to say, okay, when we receive them, we keep them in isolation for 14 days, pending the 14 days, we decide what the next action is going to be. Some conduct tests on them, but some don't. In some states, like in Abuja, for instance, after receiving some of those Almajiri students, they started taking them to their various homes and destinations and so on, without any test, without any isolation. So you can see the kind of danger that poses on the society at large, because you are risking a lot. These children are coming from a state where we don't even understand what is happening regarding the COVID-19.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned, in Kano State, I have no idea what exactly is going on in Kano State with this with the pandemic of COVID-19. So now you are taking them from there, you are sending them around the whole. You are just making a mess of the whole thing. I think that should be suspended. That should be suspended until when everything is over, when you can certify that okay, we are done with COVID-19. Then you can do whatever migration you want to do.
Do you sense? Okay, go ahead.
In my opinion of what he said, I actually of the opinion that should be suspended. And then the second thing they should advocate for is, like I said, maybe the state government, if at all they have the statistics of those people, the Almajiris living in other states. We have issues that we send people on scholarship. Governments send their indigents to other states on scholarship. So those people should be there, and then they should provide facilities for them if at all they want to go to school or whatever they want to do. Those governments the states government from the various states government should send support to those states of their inhabitants.
Now,
not really taking them to
yes.
the states.
A lot of people got concerned when the issue of the coronavirus issue started. And we saw in northern Nigeria where many religious leaders, defied the rule. They gathered their congregants, their adherents. And at a point, particularly in Kano, a lot of these Almajiri children came out and they were shouting, "No corona." They got to a point where some even washed their hands and drank the water, defying the norm. And look at, in the twinkle of an eye, mysterious deaths that are happening. Are we not scared that in the long run there's just going to be a breakdown of law and order somehow? Because as the situation is escalating, Nigerian government may be forced. Just yesterday, the curfew was relaxed a bit, and all of a sudden we saw what happened. Banks, jam-packed, markets, people going about their normal businesses without recourse, to personal hygiene or protection. Now, it might get to a serious level, the pandemic, and the government might decide to say, look, let's shut down again and then, impose stringent measures.
Certainly, that is what my expectations
are.
So
what will be, that just seem to be, going to be an explosion somehow.
Yeah.
Security, law and order.
Yeah, I anticipate that because not as if I'm not as if I'm a pessimist.
Yes.
But when you add 1 and 2 together, and what do you expect out of a situation like this? Our numbers are now going down, and then the government is easing lockdown. Nigerians are not, I don't think that we have the discipline to conduct ourselves in a manner that we'll be able to say, okay, we'll adhere to guidelines given to us by government. Even with the restrictions, even with the lockdown, what did we see on the streets? People traveling traveling around without any recourse, like you said. People, behaving as if there is nothing going on, just normal, living their normal lives. Despite all the singing and
I saw a video yesterday in Lagos.
Precautions.
After the lockdown was relaxed, a beer parlor, a joint was opened. Of course, they had to take the temperatures of people before going in, but you need to see the video. The massive crowd inside, having fun, drinking.
There are people that still believe that this thing is. Some will tell you that it's a political gimmick. Some will tell you that it's not real, and so you hear a lot of things. Partly, I would say, what is contributing to this is ignorance, and this is why the National Orientation Agency needs to be on the lookout. Yes, on the lookout for this. Needs to do what they need to do. Now more than ever, the National Orientation Agency must be seen to be very active, to do it diligent work, and to ensure that it enlightens people on this whole COVID-19 thing. Going to the grassroots is very important. It's not enough to come on TV and talk or to go on radio. No, you need to now adopt a grassroots approach to it, going door to door, speaking in their languages.
When we were younger, we had those Defender Land Rovers that used to go to the hinterlands with megaphones at the top of it to announce they go to the village markets, and it's part of the Ministry of Information and particularly the National Orientation Agency. What happened to that system?
Okay, I don't have much idea on that, but I want to talk about the
failure of National Orientation Agency.
Okay. Before that, I want to tell us that this issue, what is going on now, is not lack of information. I think there is enough information about this.
No, but the information you have most of the time are distorted. Like if you have a government agency, for instance, that deals that their own primary information, as the name implies, National Orientation Agency.
Yes.
These guys have budget. They have a huge budgetary allocation.
Yes.
But we have seen them to be absent.
No, their voice are not heard on this, particularly on this issue. Even though they are dead, in fact.
They allow fake news to thrive.
There's actually, like you said, there is a lot of information. Yes, there is a lot of information. A lot of information. But again, I will echo what you just said. It's mostly distorted information. Even among the educated people. What people rely more on WhatsApp now and social media for information.
Yeah.
Do you understand? And sometimes, or should I say most times, what you get circulated on social media, somebody just sit down and just write something, and then boom, he sends it, and then it goes viral. Maybe he wrote it from the angle of a very sentimental, approach, or from a very bad, and so people, you can also always cash in on people's sentiment and emotions, and then the thing goes viral, and people consider it to be fact. And the information, like I said, is not mostly from authorities relevant to that cause. So how do you expect people to get the needed information?
Now, on the final note, I want you to react to the issue of fake news. How do you tackle fake news and fake dissemination of information? On the final note, please. Just 10 to 20 seconds each.
You tackle the issue of
fake news.
Fake news is a pandemic. Really, it's a pandemic. How to tackle it? Well, to make sure you give the reliable information, because I believe what the youths are facing is that trust that we're talking about. They don't have the trust in the government.
And you?
And to give.
Well, one of the ways to counter fake news will be with us for as long as there's social media.
Yes.
People will always fabricate things for whatever reason, for interest, for personal interest, or for whatever reason. But what you must do now is to make truth and the authentic information more available.
Making truth, the authentic information more available. We have been talking about how to support the Nigerian military, and of course we dealt with the issue of fake news and the Almajiri system with my guests Elias Ayuba and Victor Aka, who joined me on Security Dossier. This is the much we can take on this episode of Security Dossier until we come your way again with another exciting edition of Security Dossier. My name is Lawrence Audu. Bye for now.